Hello everyone, it's Takasubudity here, and for today, so we know that Nintendo Switch has games. It's known by that, obviously. There's a plethora of games, a whole list of them that you can go from first-party games to second-party to third parties, even some other games such as anime games and Fortnite, I guess. But there's really a lot of big first-party titles that you can name from time to time. You can pretty much name them right now, going from aside to Mario, Zelda, Kirby, Donkey Kong, Splatoon, Xenoblade, all those games, Fire Emblem. Those are pretty much the most well-known Nintendo games we've gotten throughout the years. However, there's one game that doesn't really get as much of a treatment as the other big titles get. Well, aside from Donkey Kong, but even if that's the case, you can kind of tell that Nintendo just kind of ran out of ideas for this game. And that, my friend, is none other than the game ARMS. Yeah, people remember ARMS, right? At least I hope. Okay, what I'm saying, like, there's only 10% of people I know that knows the game about ARMS, and I'm one of those 10%, to be honest. The thing about ARMS, though, is that it's 2023, and nowadays ARMS doesn't really get mentioned as much as the other big titles that we're getting this year. Overall, it seems so weird that ARMS became kind of a forgotten title. I wouldn't say forgotten, but mostly a mix of forgotten and an underrated title in the Switch's lineup. But why was that exactly? Well, let's just go and discuss what really happened to ARMS. Keep in mind that I'm mostly taking these claims, whether it's from theories, from speculation, or just from videos that I see that kind of mention the reason why ARMS became the way it is. So with that, let's start off with the first thing back in 2017 when the Switch was having its first showcase by Yoshiaki Koizumi. So back in 2017, when Koizumi was showcasing the first ever Nintendo Switch system, at the time there were games that were revealed during its lifetime. In the year 2017, there were games like Breath of the Wild, which was pretty much the first ever game to come out and launch along with the Nintendo Switch. There was also the upcoming Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which was a really interesting one, given from the fact that when it comes to Mario Kart 8, it was surprising to get a deluxe version. There was even snipper clips and a few other ones, and even Mario Odyssey being shown off for the very first time. But one of the big games that were shown off was ARMS. What is ARMS all about exactly? Well, it is a unique 3D fighting game that consists of motion controls and a fighting game mechanic that takes you in third person. And it was interesting. It was quite an interesting amount of coolness, a bit of uniqueness about the game itself, with character designs going from Springman, Ribbon Girl, Helix, Ninjara, and even adding more characters later on, being Lollipop, Dr. Coil, Masango. Any of those characters, those are really interesting. Plus, you can also change the mechanic of your arms whenever you want, and it's really nice to mix them up from time to time. There was also a few parts of modes that were kind of dire, but even if that's the case, ARMS was pretty unique. It sold over 2 million copies at the time, and it was really an interesting one to talk about in terms of its new release. Plus, it was a brand new IP that Nintendo was trying out just right after the success of Splatoon back in the Wii U era. So as you can tell, ARMS was pretty much great. But afterwards, a few months later, the game pretty much stopped, and ARMS was rarely even mentioned ever again. The only time ARMS ever got this much popularity was during 2020 when Min Min was added as a Smash character in Ultimate as a DLC character. So yeah, that's kind of really about it. Afterwards, ARMS just became forgettable. But what exactly happened during its time when ARMS was shown off? Well, first of all, is that ARMS itself was pretty great. It had an interesting concept, really cool characters, pretty small modes, but really wasn't much. But even if that's the case, I can see the game having that much potential. That is until E3 2017 came along and kind of overshadowed ARMS a little bit more. Now, E3's announcements were pretty huge, especially from the fact that this was the same presentation that showed off the very first release date for Mario Odyssey and also Metroid Prime 4. I mean, come on, many fans would really love to see a Metroid Prime 4 game at some point, even though it's been years since that game existed. But out of topic, really, this announcement pretty much overshadowed ARMS quite a small bit. But even if that's the case, I can still see ARMS, it was still a pretty much good thing. When E3 came out, a day later, ARMS then released, and like I said, sold 2 million copies, and I really hope that no other game that comes out just a month later would possibly, overshadow the game completely. Okay, what am I saying? Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 was coming out a month right after ARMS release, and Splatoon was another one of Nintendo's best ever franchises that they've made during the Wii U era. After the huge success of Splatoon, even though it had very small content at that time, you can kind of tell that Nintendo was trying out something different with its game, and it really sold very well and was well received by not just the Splatoon community, which pretty much became new, but also the Nintendo fan base as well, as it was really interesting to see Nintendo taking another different route that got them really successful. So a sequel was pretty much in hand, and it seems that Splatoon 2 came out on July, while ARMS came out in June. So, but not to say that Splatoon 2 was the reason ARMS became pretty bad. It's just the timing of it. ARMS was a brand new IP that was, something that fans were interested in, and especially me. I was really interested to see what ARMS became to be. But Splatoon 2 was already a well-established franchise by Nintendo a couple years back at the time, so it was so weird to see that this game came out right after the release of ARMS, and then afterwards, ARMS didn't really get as much attention as it usually is. And keep in mind that ARMS itself was also an esports title, but for some reason, the esports community doesn't really bother with the game itself. That's not the only reason why the game why ARMS was like this. Aside from its Shadow, the game itself also suffered from one thing: free updates. Now look, free updates aren't really as bad as it is. Now keep in mind that when it comes to nowadays, free updates have been kind of a bother for many Nintendo fans all alike. But when it comes to ARMS, it was a new franchise at the time, so they let it slide. The reason why Splatoon was so successful to begin with was really because of its free updates. It had pretty small content, but every once in a while, like mostly every month, Splatfests come in, they add new weapons, they add some new fresh gear, everything about it. It's kind of like Fortnite, except before Fortnite was really even a thing. But even if that's the case, Splatoon was such a great thing because of its free updates. So they wanted to try it out for ARMS. Though the problem is that the game roster only has 10, which isn't really that bad for a fighting game roster. But when you compare games such as Smash Brothers and Street Fighter 5, it was kind of weird to see that ARMS only had a pretty small roster. But it is kind of an exception as a few months going by. It only got about 5 characters, with one already in the game but wasn't playable for some reason, and then 4 new ones that were added later on. And yeah, while the game itself also didn't have that much single player content, each character that released over time also did add a few new, modes and all that, kind of pretty much freshens and mixes things up a bit. However, after November 2017, with the release of Dr. Coil, ARMS pretty much just stopped, which is kind of the reason why the whole free update model wasn't really a good idea. It kind of worked for Splatoon and all, but when it comes to ARMS itself, which was a brand new IP, it kind of felt like Nintendo just did it really dirty with the game. Now, look, free updates can honestly be a good thing if done right. Now look, Kirby Star Allies was a game that suffered from free updates. When the game initially came out in 2018, many fans found it kinda mixed. There were a lot of mixed reception from it. From the fact that the game felt dire at start, and also from the fact that the game is too easy. I mean, it's a Kirby game, of course it's gonna be easy at some point, but then there's also Mario Tennis Aces. This was a unique take on the free update standpoint, where every single month they add a new character, but you can get the character pretty early on if you participate in online tournaments. Once you do that online tournament, you can get the character pretty early. This was a really nice model that I feel like that we haven't really seen as much with the other Mario sports titles at all. And you can still get the character for free anyway, so there's pretty much no point. But at the time, having online tournaments in order to get a character early pretty much got fans going back into this game from time to time. And then Animal Crossing, yeah, well, the game itself hasn't really only lasted about a year lasted for a year since its release. Animal Crossing from every single month mostly had a lot of great things added, from new creatures, some new items, and even a brand new DLC that was added in 2021. Overall, a free update, even though it stopped every single month. I always see new players online every time I play Animal Crossing. But ARMS really wasn't the case. It only lasted a few months, and the whole thing just kind of became forgetful afterwards. And last but not least, many really just kind of moved on from ARMS right after it became a new game in 2017. What I mean by that is that Breath of the Wild was already a huge thing. It had 100 hours of game time, and you can pretty much do anything you want with Breath of the Wild, even after the DLC first release. Mario Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it was a game that also came out in 2017, and it had a whole bunch of things, especially from the fact that this was Monolith Soft's comeback and going back to what made the Xenoblade franchise such a unique take to begin with. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was a game that may never end, and that pretty much proves it now with the DLC. And now with Super Mario Odyssey, the game was a new Mario 3D game that we haven't had since like Mario Galaxy. And yeah, I can also count Mario 3D World, but I mean like an actual 3D Mario game. You can kind of tell that ARMS really didn't get as much treatment as the other Nintendo franchises. No sequel, no merchandise, and no other talks about it. And the only thing I can really recall is, like I mentioned, Min Min being added as a Smash DLC character. So, yeah, that's kind of pretty much what happened to ARMS. It's a shame, though. ARMS is really an underrated title, and I was one of the only few people that can really pretty much remember ARMS. And also forget, because from time to time, I kind of forget that ARMS was a thing until it comes back to my memory. And I kind of hope you all enjoy this type of video essay. I really hope Nintendo at some point would try to learn their lesson from making a new IP and all. And yeah, I get it, Splatoon 2 is a great game, and I'm not trying to say that Splatoon 2 pretty much kills ARMS' hype. It just kind of overshadowed what seemed to be a really potentially good new IP, became kind of more of a dire and small, dry fighting game that doesn't get as much respect as it used to be. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and so at that, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos, follow my Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time. And remember this, once a legend, always a legend.